The US government is currently confirming the unbelievable. They are now aggressively looking for ways to buy Bitcoin. And pay attention now. Cannot be ruled out to exchange gold for Bitcoin. And that would trigger an absolute shockwave in the financial markets if the US government exchanges gold reserves or gold certificates for Bitcoin. Cynthia Lummis has already suggested it, and now it is being confirmed again. From Bo Hines, the executive director under Donald Trump, in a new interview that is worth watching and that we absolutely must see. He is really making headlines at the moment by saying that the US should buy Bitcoin without limits or will buy Bitcoin without limits. Now they even potentially want to sell the gold. This is now being confirmed directly, for the first time by the Trump government or the Trump administration. Additionally, we need to look at what Donald Trump is up to again, as he is causing further uncertainty. He is making new statements regarding the sells that are currently unsettling the entire markets. And we have with us Youth in Big White CIO, who actually says here, by 2029, Bitcoin will be at $1 million US, and he justifies it, among other things, by saying that Bitcoin will reach the gold market capitalization. And Bitcoin might even surpass it, so it's ultra interesting what's happening here again. But first, let's take a look at Donald Trump. It's really astonishing how he keeps changing his opinion all the time. So we know that on the 2nd of April is the very, very important date. I've always said that this is when the mutual tariffs will begin. This means that President Trump says his plan for mutual tariffs will show flexibility. Just a few minutes before the statement, President Trump had declared he would not change his mind about the tariffs. So just take that in. That means Donald Trump says, hey, the opinion will not change. The tariffs are definitely going through here. And a few minutes later, he says there will be flexibility for the tariffs. This means the market doesn't know what to make of this statement. Now, is Trump serious here? Are the tariffs coming or not? I've already told you that on April 2nd, the tariffs will come into effect, and many people are currently speculating that Donald Trump will not follows through and then maybe says, as he is saying here, there is a certain flexibility. He is just using it as a bargaining chip, and then the actual tariff rate might be somewhat lower. And that could lead to a positive signal in the market as the market realizes, okay, Donald Trump didn't really mean it seriously, but was just bluffing and using it as leverage. But now he's creating massive uncertainty in the market again with statements like this, because first he said, no, there will be no leeway. Then he says there will be leeway again. And what is the market supposed to do now? What are they supposed to make of this statement? But that's just the confusion tactic that Donald Trump uses intentionally. Currently, he's driving to unsettle the markets to keep the markets in a risk-off sentiment so that pressure is also put on the Federal Reserve because the USA needs to reduce its debt, the USA needs to refinance. And for that, they need uncertainty in the market so that the Fed lowers the interest rates. Well, I'll be glad when this whole theater is finally over, all the back and forth with the tariffs. And then it goes up again and down again and blah, blah, blah. But now we're looking at Bo Hines, and he's really making waves here. He's causing quite a stir and commotion in the US government. He's currently sparking very, very intense discussions. And now it continues here. That means he said they potentially want to buy Bitcoin without limits. And now he's saying the next thing, which is, hey folks, President Trump's administration just said they're aggressively looking for buying opportunities. For Bitcoin, you all aren't bullish enough. And then there's another announcement here, now Bo Hines, where do we have it here, makes another tweet here and says, Bitcoin is digital, gold, and should be treated as such. He tweeted this a few minutes ago, so by the time the video goes online for you, it will have been several hours. But he tweeted this here, and now there's a new interview here. That means he first says here, okay, Bitcoin is comparable to digital gold. That's already very, very important to know because he's already setting gold and Bitcoin, at least in terms of potential. And now he makes the massive statement where he says, hey, potentially we could theoretically also sell the gold certificates, sell gold, buy Bitcoin with it, nothing would speak against it. Check out this outrageous statement here. We'll also take a look at what this would mean for the global financial markets, because it would definitely trigger a shockwave here. I mean, just take that in. You're selling the best store of value in history and buying Bitcoin with it, which in my opinion is now the new best store of value. That means gold was the best store of value for the last 1,000 years. Now Bitcoin is here and Bitcoin is now the superior store of value.
And I didn't get to ask it, but I'm going to ask you now. You've mentioned, and I'm sure you've had this question before, budget neutral ways to potentially buy Bitcoin down the line. Can you give me an example of a budget neutral way you may be thinking of?
I mean, there's a lot of high IQ people working on this, and I will give you an example, but I say that only to say that there's been countless ideas over the course of the last week or so, and it's in a sense of how we can actually accomplish this. I'll actually point you to Senator Lummis's Bitcoin Act of 2025, in which she believes that we can identify the real true value of some of these gold certificates that are, basically, I think it's like $172 an ounce is what they're categorized at right now. And if we actually realize the gains on that, that would be a budget neutral way to acquire more Bitcoin. I mean, there's countless different ways you can do it. I know the Secretary of Treasury, Bessent, and the Secretary of Commerce with Howard Lutnick. I mean, they're going to come up with, these are smart people that understand this space really well. And as we convene as a working group, we'll flesh out the best ideas and we'll enact those ideas.
Gold. Theoretically, could you sell some of the gold in Fort Knox to buy Bitcoin? Can we? Is that possible?
Well, if it's budget neutral and doesn't cost the taxpayer a dime,
You're kind of exchanging one for the other.
We'll see whatever creative ideas that we can come up with. And, like I said, with all the interagency working group actors that will convene in these meetings, I mean, we're going to hear some tremendous ideas about how we could do it. I just don't want to box us in yet to what that actually looks like, because I want to be able to hear from everybody. And I think that's one thing that's different about this White House is we welcome in new ideas, innovative solutions, and it's no different the way that we're running our office.
They clearly say, hey, we can also sell gold and buy Bitcoin with it, or rather the certificates, the newly evaluated ones. Use the gold valuations to buy Bitcoin. He says here if it's budget neutral, but just half a minute before, he explained that it would be budget neutral here if you reevaluate the gold. The certificates now from something like $40 to now here, $3,000 per ounce or something like that. And then from the surplus, either pledge the gold or maybe even sell the gold. And then buy Bitcoin with it. He simply addresses here, okay, hey, it's very, very important that the whole thing is budget neutral. But he says there are high IQ people, very, very smart, very, very clever people in the US government who are currently working hard to find budget neutral ways to accumulate Bitcoin here. It also looks very, very promising here. So there won't just be one possibility here, but from what it sounds like to me, there are multiple ways to carry this out. He also mentions that Senator Lummis brought up the whole thing with gold, meaning the basic idea of selling gold to buy Bitcoin comes from Senator Cynthia Lummis. Bo Hines picks up on this and is then asked, hey, could we theoretically take the gold from Fort Knox, sell it, and buy Bitcoin with it? He doesn't say yes directly, but he says as long as it's budget neutral, we can do it. And half a minute before, he explains that it is budget neutral. So for me, this is an absolute confirmation of what's happening here. You can now sell gold and buy Bitcoin with it. This doesn't mean it will happen, but it can be done. And from what it sounded like to me, it didn't get rejected either. So I definitely assume that it is being considered. I mean, the big question now is, does it make sense to sell gold? Gold wasn't a bad store of value, and it still isn't, but Bitcoin is here. The space rocket. I mean, people who bet on Bitcoin in the next 10 years will probably massively outpace those who bet on gold. By the way, because many people assume because gold now has such a big new all-time high, which is great. But since the Trump administration, since Donald Trump became the new president, Bitcoin has actually outperformed gold, even though there have been significant drawbacks. But I'm not against gold or anything. I always say, hey, go ahead and have gold too. So both don't exclude each other. It doesn't mean that the USA has to sell all its gold, but maybe sell a certain amount of gold reserves and then also consider other budget neutral ways to achieve a double effect. That means selling certain gold reserves that simply come from revaluation, and then additionally finding other ways. And Matt Hougan has now made a very, very interesting take on this. The Bitwise CEO, who has issued his own Bitcoin ETF with Bitwise and has always had very, very interesting insights on Bitcoin, is giving his new price forecast. And he also makes a comparison between Bitcoin and gold, explaining why he believes Bitcoin will definitely surpass gold. And now greetings go out to Peter Schiff, to all the gold bugs who criticize Bitcoin. There are now more and more people realizing, hey, gold is the old technology, it's like a horse or something, which is pretty cool, you can get from A to B quickly. But if you have a rocket, you can get from A to B much faster. And if you have a rocket, the dangerous aspects can't keep up either. And Matt Hougan has recognized something similar here. And please check out what he has to say about Bitcoin and gold.
My favorite view of the value of Bitcoin on a long-term basis is to look at the size of the market it's going after. I think Bitcoin is well on its way to disrupting gold. That's a $20 trillion market. I think it's going to be used for international transaction and cross-border transactions. That's another many trillion-dollar market. And then you can divide that by the number of Bitcoin and you end up with a target amount. At Bitwise, we think it's going to cross $1 million by 2029. I think from a shorter term perspective, you can just look at supply and demand in the market, right? The big criticism of Bitcoin is the price is set by supply and demand. But that's also a real benefit when you're in a market like today, where again, we're producing 160,000 Bitcoin a year and ETFs are buying 500,000, right? Something has to give. And I think what gives is price resistance and ultimately it goes higher.
So a $1 million Bitcoin target. Bitcoin will rise to 1 million here by 2029. And he really justifies it very, very smartly here. He says there are several capital pools here, including gold, with a top of 20 trillion. But there are also other things like cross-border payments, which also have several trillion. I also see the real estate market, the bond market, the stocks. I see potential in all asset classes here for Bitcoin to draw out the value. From these assets, yes, I don't know if you can call them bubbles, but definitely asset classes. And then he says here about gold that Bitcoin will disrupt gold. That means Bitcoin might even replace gold here. That means a disruptive technology is something that really shakes things up, that truly replaces the old. And then there are only very, very few people who still use it. That means, for example, if we take a look, we've already had several technologies that were simply digitized. That means in the past, people used smoke signals, carrier pigeons, for example. That was kind of cool too. Then people used mail, sending letters back and forth or something. That was pretty cool too. But eventually, there was a time when technological advancement brought about a technology that set aside all the old technologies. That means various technologies were used in parallel, for example, for information transmission. People used carrier pigeons, letters, smoke signals, and so on. Eventually, an engineer came along and found the perfect solution here. That was the case here, the internet, and the internet was the perfect medium to transmit information here. Now it's the same with Bitcoin. That means the internet disrupted smoke signals, carrier pigeons, the postal service, it disrupted all of that here, meaning it set aside the old. And then there was only the new. And we've always seen when such a digitization took place that 99, 95, 96, 97, 98%, a very, very large percentage became part of this new technology. That means, if we look, who still uses carrier pigeons to transmit information today? Almost no one. Who still uses smoke signals today? Almost no one. Who still uses a letter to transmit information today? Almost no one. Everyone uses WhatsApp, Telegram, some kind of messenger. Everything runs over the internet. And the same thing can happen with Bitcoin. That's the disruption Matt Hougan is talking about here. When people realize we currently have different stores of value, some do it in gold, some in silver, some in stocks, some in commodities. There are various ways to store your value currently. And the commodities and the different options, the different asset classes, forgot real estate, they all work more or less, but they all have certain disadvantages. Just like smoke signals have disadvantages, mail has disadvantages, carrier pigeons have disadvantages. The same goes for gold, stocks, and silver. They all have certain disadvantages. For example, with gold, it's difficult to divide and transport. With stocks, you could say there's a CO risk. With real estate, it's not flexible. It's immobile. Then you can move on. With silver, it's similar stories as with gold. You can go through all kinds of asset classes now, and all those disadvantages we no longer have with Bitcoin. With Bitcoin, we now have the ultimate store of value. It's really about finding the best store of value now. Just like, for example, Michael Saylor says it's digital real estate, here it's digital gold, here it's the disruption. Then it also means that just like with the internet, where now 99% of people use the internet for information transfer, 99% of people will not store their value in gold, silver, stocks, bonds, etc. in the future. They will store it here in Bitcoin. I mean, there will still be people who buy bonds, stocks, silver, gold, etc. But in the long run, the majority will very, very likely find themselves in Bitcoin because Bitcoin is the disruption here. And if this happens here, what Matt Hougan says, he first talks about gold, then comes the real estate market, the bond market, and so on. That's a big outlook. Then it could really lead to Bitcoin becoming the world reserve currency, the common standard when it comes to storing value. Then the standard for storing value is no longer the savings account, but Bitcoin. That then truly becomes the risk-free asset. That will then become a new hurdle rate. And I'm very, very curious to see how it all plays out. In any case, the whole thing is ultra bullish. If you still want to buy Bitcoin, I'll put a link below for you. 21 Bitcoin shout out. And definitely check it out. You can do it easily, safely, and simply. There are savings plans, you can make one-time transactions, you can do an auto wallet transfer, limit orders, and much more. Definitely check it out. With the code, save up to 20% on fees when buying Bitcoin. See you guys until then. Peace out.